Well, the Buffalo Bills took a nice leap in 2020 and finished the season one win shy of a return to the Super Bowl. That leap was thanks in large part to the play of quarterback Josh Allen, who meshed perfectly with offensive coordinator Brian Daboll in his third season, led the Bills to their first AFC East title in a quarter century. Allen setting the table for an MVP run and barring a major setback, he looks set to be the face of the franchise for the next decade. The Bills' good bets to continue to fight for future AFC East titles. Finished the year 13-3 atop the division, took out Indianapolis and Baltimore before falling to the Kansas City Chiefs. In that AFC title game, only the Green Bay Packers scored more points than they did, and they finished the season winning 8 of their final 9 games. For more on the Bills and where they sit as we hit the offseason in earnest, let's now welcome back Ryan Wilson and Jonathan Jones. Let's start with the quarterback, Josh Allen. Here he passed for almost 1,500 yards more, threw for 17 more touchdowns than he did the season previous. Only Mahomes, Watson, and Rodgers had a better passer rating than he did. What made him so much better in 2021, Ryan?
I think you mentioned it in the intro there, Jeremy. I think Brian Daboll had a lot to do with it, and him just growing into that role. It's sort of funny to think about when he was in Wyoming, completing half the passes he threw. No one really knew what to make of him. Was he a top 10 pick? Should he be drafted later? He obviously went early to the Bills, and at the time there were a ton of questions. They made the right decision. Brandon Beane, Sean McDermott nailed it there. Sometimes it takes young quarterbacks time to grow into their role, and sometimes, and this is something we don't talk enough about, it has to be a good system fit. Josh Allen has fit in perfectly with what we've seen, what Brian Daboll wants to do with that offense, and putting playmakers around him. Getting someone like Stefon Diggs turns out to be a pretty good thing for a young quarterback. Stefon Diggs had a fantastic season. And here's the thing that I keep going back to. Throughout the season, I always said, okay, is Josh Allen going to have that moment that we saw last season in 2019 where he melts down? We saw it in that Texans game in the playoffs. He never had it. He struggled in the final game of the season for them against the Chiefs, but there's no shame in that. Up to that point, he played at a all-pro level. He was in the MVP conversation, and deservedly so. And I just think it's a matter of maturation, and I expect him to continue to grow in this role as one of the best young quarterbacks in the NFL.
You know, Ryan, I remember sitting at a table at the Indianapolis Combine last year, back when you could sit at the table with folks indoors, and talking with Brandon Beane. And Beane and I have known each other for a while, and he knew that I wasn't a huge fan of Josh Allen coming out for a lot of the reasons that you just espoused. Completing just half of his passes at Wyoming. He should be dominating at Wyoming against the competition. But Brandon was very clear that they all believed in Josh Allen and that they thought that he was going to take a step in 2020. And I said, all right, listen, you guys see him all the time, so I'm going to believe you on it. I don't know how big of a step he's going to take. I don't know if anybody was expecting the step that he took and really improving his accuracy in the way that he did. So much credit, of course, goes to quarterbacks coach Ken Dorsey and offensive coordinator Brian Daboll. But, of course, the guy himself, Josh Allen, really took it upon himself last offseason to simply get better because he had to get better. And, yeah, we were all waiting on him to sort of crash like he did in that playoff game, as you mentioned, Ryan, and in a couple of games earlier in the season. And it really never happened for Josh Allen. So, the one thing that I would caution against, especially as we move forward into 2021, Josh Allen set an incredibly high bar for himself. So I don't know if we should necessarily, especially just 3 years into his career, expect that in year 4, in year 5, in year 6. Maybe we should sort of temper a little bit of expectation about Josh Allen and say, maybe you won't be in the MVP conversation every single year. Let's make sure that our defense is stout, our offensive line is great, you have your weapons around you, because, hey, not all the time can you play at such an elite level. But listen, if he can string together 2 seasons like this, you won't hear me say that anymore about Josh Allen.
I was going to say, good luck getting Buffalo fans to say that. They are ecstatic to have a quarterback like Josh Allen. 21st in the league when you look at their rushing statistics, so obviously they need to get a little bit better there. What other areas do they need to address in the offseason, in your opinion, JJ?
Yeah, I think it obviously has to be up front along the offensive line. I think it really does start there. I talk about Josh Allen. You want better out of your run game, but really they had a tough time blocking a lot of defensive lines throughout the season. And so when I look at what they need, they don't have very many guards, especially if they move Cody Ford to tackle. They have Spain and Feliciano, who are not under contract for 2021. So you start looking around, and for me, I just think that they need both interior and tackles over there. And then as well, you look on the other side, cornerback for the Buffalo Bills. Yeah, they have Trey White, no doubt at all about it, but Levi Wallace and Josh Norman are both free agents. You need a little bit more out of that corner position. So who do you target if you are the Buffalo Bills? Well, for me, again, you have Gabe Jackson, who was just released by the Las Vegas Raiders. You know, you look at his age, you look at his cap number. That was an obvious one. Maybe he goes back to the Raiders. Jason Peters, I don't think he's going to be able to fit under the cap there in Philadelphia. You have Cam Fleming, Trey Turner, of course, about to be released there by the Chargers. And then you look at cornerback Quentin Dunbar or Kevin King. Any of those guys, you don't want to go top of the market. I don't think that the Buffalo Bills will be able to do that. They don't have a whole lot of space. And GM Brandon Beane has even said, this offseason isn't going to be like last offseason. We're up against the cap. There's probably not going to be that big blockbuster like there was last year with Stefon Diggs. That's okay. You know, they're probably not going to be able to re-sign Matt Milano. They understand that. He's going to sign some 4-year, $50-some million deals somewhere else. But, you know, you need to solidify up front along that offensive line. And there are going to be plenty of options, I believe, very affordable options for the Buffalo Bills here in about 10 days.
Yeah, that's the key, JJ, the interior of that offensive line. It also leads me to some other needs in terms maybe of the running back position. But as you noted, if you beef up the offensive line, that can solve issues behind you in the backfield there. You see some other needs there. Linebacker, you talk about Matt Milano. Sounds like he's probably gone because he's going to be too expensive. Edge rusher, could they do something there? You mentioned not having very much cap space. So that probably means no Unique Ngakoue. But maybe if the price is right, you can work something out and do some math there on the back end to make it work. Another name could be Melvin Ingram. He's on the wrong side of 30. He's probably done with the Chargers there. How much time does he have left? In the interior defense, they could use some help as well. Tyson Alualu is coming off a really good season. He'll be a free agent. Sheldon Rankins has battled injury, but he played well a few years ago. So if you can get that Sheldon Rankins back, that is certainly something. On the interior there of the offensive line, Matt Filer could be a cheap option. Those cheap options you were talking about. And if you want to target someone in the draft, a great place to go is Zaven Collins at the end of the first round. That is a linebacker in which you can replace Matt Milano with. And I'll bring it up again because I love the idea of a running back like Najee Harris going to the Bills. Devin Singletary was okay. Zach Moss was okay. Fix the offensive line, get Najee Harris. You can also catch balls coming out of the backfield. That's one more weapon for your quarterback going forward.
So you mentioned a couple of names there they could target in the draft. Just want to make note, the Bills did sign Micah Hyde on Friday. He was not a free agent. They just signed him to an extension. But Ryan, to your point, a couple of names you threw out there in terms of targets in the draft. What are some of the notables that you think that they should be looking at in terms of the 2021 draft?
So right there you see the needs there, linebacker, running back, and of course edge rusher. They're picking at the bottom of the first round. There's a chance that all these guys should be there in that range. Gregory Rousseau played at the University of Miami. He opted out this season in 2020. Had 15.5 sacks the year before, and that was as a part-time player, not a part-time player, but he had moved from wide receiver to edge rusher. So that was really doesn't have a lot of experience at the edge rusher position. He's only going to get better. He's going to be a project, but he's a big, thick guy you can put on the edge there. Get after the quarterback. The Bills need to do more of that to be successful in that defense. That defense, by the way, which played better and better as the season progressed, it was playing at a pretty high level as it got into the playoffs.
Obviously, expectations will be sky high amongst Bills fans after ending their AFC East title drought. But what are the realistic expectations for the Bills as they head into the 2021 season, JJ?
Well, I think, you know, I don't want to say that they're the kings of the AFC East. They certainly wear the crown right now. I'm waiting to see what the New England Patriots do at the quarterback position before I go ahead and place that crown on the Buffalo Bills' head just yet. However, they are very, very well positioned to do that. And Ryan just mentioned how well that defense played down the stretch. After their Week 11 bye and up until that Kansas City Chiefs saw that is Patrick Mahomes, the defense allowed just 17 points per game against opponents. They just have to replicate that. Oh, that's all you have to do is replicate that. But they didn't play tomato cans down the stretch. They were playing some pretty good football teams. And so I like the way that they're positioned. Again, temper expectations just a tad on Josh Allen. I think that he will continue to be a top 10 quarterback next season. But if he slips out of the top 5, which he very much was a top 5 quarterback this last NFL season, if he does that, that's okay. That's sort of natural regression. The one good thing that is working in the Buffalo Bills' favor is they did not have any sort of brain drain in the offseason. You look at the coordinators, Brian Daboll and Leslie Frazier, both considered for jobs, the Chargers and the Texans respectively. They're staying there. You look at the front office that Brandon Beane has put together, his assistant GM, Joe Shane, and Lake Dawson, and Brian Gain, and Dan Morgan. All of those guys within the front office have stuck around in Buffalo. They got a couple of interviews, but nobody got general manager jobs. And so I look at this and I say, okay, if you can keep most of your group on the football field together, you have your coaches, you have your front office, you have your scouting staff, why can't you run it back? And so the only thing I'm looking out for, a little bit of regression from Josh Allen, which should be natural if it happens, and what the New England Patriots are going to do at the most important position in sports.
Bills fans are going to be angry if they don't get to the same spot they got to this season in terms of battling the Chiefs for the right to play in the Super Bowl, and I think that's fair. I don't know if Josh Allen is going to regress. We've seen a lot of these young quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes took a step forward. Lamar Jackson took a tiny step back. So they could be somewhere in the middle. But I think the good news for Josh Allen is that he has Stefon Diggs. He has Cole Beasley. He has Gabriel Davis coming into year 2. He's going to be better. And as we've just talked about, Jeremy, if the offensive line gets better and the running game gets slightly better, that's less pressure on Josh Allen to do everything. He doesn't have to run the ball. He doesn't have to take those hits. The defense may actually come back to earth a little bit too. Sometimes you see regression from one year to the next with the defense. They're a little hard to predict in terms of how good they can be. But JJ touched on it. The Patriots are going to be the wild card here. They have a ton of cap space, and I'm going to imagine they're going to be willing to spend a lot of it in order to address all those needs they have, starting with the quarterback position, wide receiver position. They have needs on both sides of the ball. Their defense actually fell off a cliff last year. I expect them to be back in the mix. The good news for the Bills is that they have shown that they can beat this Patriots team. Now, we'll see if things change a year from now when Bill Belichick's had all this time in the lab to figure out how to beat Josh Allen. But right now, I like the Bills not only to win the division, but to make another deep playoff run.
It's been a long time since we've seen the Buffalo Bills among the top 5 favorites to win the Super Bowl, but that's how it's looking as we head into 2021. They are Ryan Wilson and Jonathan Jones helping us break down team needs and expectations this offseason. Great stuff as always, gentlemen. Thank you very much. All right, time for us to take another break, but when we come back, we've hit last call here on Happy Hour. What lies ahead for those Patriots this offseason? They have gaps to fill, and how will Bill rebound after his first losing season in forever?
Want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis. No yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.